G'day guys, let's talk solar panels, portable solar panels to be specific. So today we've got a range, we've got 3 different solar panels that we're going to show you today, all different types, and so they're all going to do different things in different, well they all do the same thing, don't they, make power, but they're all going to do it in different ways. They're different ways that can be useful for us as full-time travellers or even part-time travellers. So we're going to go through them all. We're going to show you the pros and the cons of them, what the different types are, and what their outputs are, which is really the most important thing, which panel is producing the most power, and which one we recommend. Let's get to it. Alright, first panel on the chopping block. This is the KickAss 200 watt panel. Disclaimer, they sent us this unit for review. So we didn't pay for it, we didn't buy it with our own money, sent it to us for review. So it's a 200 watt panel, it's rigid, which is like totally different to most other portables. So that means it's got a frame. This is the KickAss have the new like slimline panels, which I think are really good. They are quite slim and thin, but still being like proper, you know, like glass domestic style panels, I think. High output panels, let's say that. Alright, so this guy comes with a PWM style regulator included as part of the package. It's like attached to the back. It's a really neat little package. Alright, the cost for this guy is $549 from KickAss. It weighs 10.1 kilos and packs up in terms of this. This is the size, folded up 4 times. So this thick, this size, that thickness. The power output that we've measured, the maximum that we've been able to get out of this panel, is 135 watts. Doesn't sound like much for a 200 watt panel, but compared to the competitors, which we'll show you, it's pretty good. It's a pretty reasonable claim that they can claim 200, and we get about 135. You might get a bit more if it's cold and stuff like that. The sun's perfectly directly lined overhead, but in our general day-to-day usage, about 135 is what we found during the full sun. So being a rigid style panel has advantages and disadvantages. Obviously it is doesn't pack up as small, and it's obviously a bit heavier, but the advantage of it is that it when it's out, it sort of locks together really well, and so you'll find it becomes more of like a solid piece when you're aiming it around, when you're moving it around to aim it at the sun, all that sort of stuff. It's more durable, I think, as a solid piece of construction. The other thing is that this panel does have a stand, so you can aim it at the sun. We'll talk about stands a bit later, but they're reasonably important in getting some output out of your panels. So, and these ones are quite good. They're movable, they're strong, and we haven't had an issue with them. Alright, so this is the Bluetti. I think that's how you pronounce it. I could be wrong. They're a Chinese brand / American brand. Their focus is on sort of solar generators, which are basically lithium batteries with MPPT regulators in them and an inverter. So it's like an all-in-one little box, and they're producing these panels to complement that. So this panel is quite expensive. It's $749 without a regulator, because they usually would expect you to use the regulator in their solar generator box. This is what I would call sort of the ultra portable but high output category. So it's made of a fabric and it's very durable, and because it's made of fabric, it's quite thin, so each panel is really thin. It folds up really thin as a sandwich, and it doesn't weigh that much. So altogether this 200 watt panel weighs 6 kilos, 6.5 kilos when it's packed up. So it's, you know, about what, a third, 2/3 of the weight of a rigid style panel, and it's probably a quarter of the size when it's packed up. But it's still, so let's talk output. The output of the Bluetti that we've found is about 115 watts in general. Can get better, can get worse. Generally, pointing at the sunlight, at the sun, full sunlight, no clouds, about 115 watts is what we've been able to get consistently. So 115 watts out of a 200 watt panel. So the build quality that we found of the Bluetti is really good. It's like a high quality fabric material. The front has like a really, I don't know, scratch, dirt resistant surface on it. We've been really happy. It's got a carry handle, it's very portable. It folds up nicely together and secures itself. There's one problem we've had with it, which is that the zippers for the pocket on the back have both failed. I may have tried to jam a bit too much cable in there and a regulator, so that might be on me, but they've both stopped working. Apart from that, really good. This one has stands as well, which is quite important. It's got a stand for the 3 of the panels, so the 4 panels all stand up together. The stands are made of fabric as well, with a sort of plastic inside them. They're quite rigid. We have found in heavy winds, they can sort of, because it's quite light, it can tend to fall over and get pushed around by the wind a little bit. But we're talking pretty heavy winds here, and in that case you can just lay it down and not have the stands anyway, so I think it'll be fine. Alright, the third panel that we're talking about today, this is the AtemPower brand. This is a 300 watt blanket style, which means it doesn't have a stand, it's not rigid. Instead it unfolds and sits like a blanket on the ground. Has positives and negatives, we'll talk about them in a minute. So this one is $420, including an MPPT regulator. So it's by far the cheapest of the bunch. So this one weighs 10 kilos when it's all packed up. It folds up reasonably compactly. It's about twice the size of the Bluetti panel in terms of thickness, and about half the size of the KickAss panel when it's folded up. The power output is the real problem with this panel. It's 95 watts is what we've measured it at in full sun, sort of when the sun's up quite high. So 95 watts out of a claimed 300 watt panel. That's pretty bloody poor. The good thing is the price, so you got to take it and leave it. We'll discuss it a little bit later in terms of pros and cons and benefits and stuff. This one, being a blanket style, does not have stands, which really does hurt you when you're trying to get the most power out of your panels. Like you can't angle it towards the sun, so you really get stuck with whatever is available. So we've been using this AtemPower panel for about 6 months now. We found that the build quality is reasonable. It's not bad by any means. It seems to be kind of durable, but you can also tell that it's not using like the really high quality materials like the KickAss or the Bluetti panels. It's definitely built to a price here. Alright, let's talk portable solar power panels in general. Just a bit of a general overview of them and just my thoughts about them in general. So you can have as many portable solar power panels as you want, as long as they each have their own regulator. You can pump 3 or 4 different panels, all with their own regulator, into the same battery without a problem. The regulators all take care of the voltages and everything and make it all work. Alternatively, you can get an upsize regulator and you can plug like 2 or 3 panels of the same type and size and output, so preferably the same, exactly the same panel. You can plug them all into the same regulator that's sized appropriately for it and only have one regulator, which is pretty cool. So that's like the idea behind the Bluetti, is that you can add like 2 or 3 of those 200 watt panels together to their solar generator box and have quite a high output in there. Alright, so more solar is always better. There's no negatives to having too much solar. Just have as much as you can, okay? Now, permanently mounted panels are by far the best because you don't have to touch them or think about them. So load up your caravan roof with as many as you can, load up your car roof or truck roof in our case, or whatever you've got, just load it up and have as many permanently mounted solar panels as you can with appropriately sized regulator. The more mounted you have, the less issues you'll have. Now, this video isn't about permanently mounted solar panels though, it's about portable panels. So we'll discuss why portable panels are really good. So, number one, if you don't have the roof space, you are stuck with portable panels. That's what you're going to have to use. So, luckily there's a good variety and lots of options for you. If you are going to park in the shade, having a portable solar panel, very good, because you are not going to be stuck by sitting under the shade with your caravan or whatever, or your rooftop tent getting hot in the sun. You can park your rooftop tent in the shade, put out a portable solar panel, still get the power output from it. Thirdly, the portable panels with stands produce power a lot later into the afternoon and a lot earlier in the morning if they're pointed at the sun. So obviously it's physics. Something lying flat on the ground with the sun coming in at an angle is not going to get the full effect of the sun's force. Whereas something that's facing to the sun at 90 degrees, yeah, will get the full impact of the sun and it'll be able to produce a lot more power. So very big benefit of solar panels, portable solar panels with stands there. What else? You can always add them, right? So you've only got a certain amount of roof space, you've only got a certain amount like setup. For us with our Caravan, we've got 2 panels set up on top, and that's how we bought it. And we haven't wanted to really spend too much money to upgrade that. So instead of spending money upgrading something that's fixed, we've instead spent money on portable solar panels that we can use on this Caravan or on the next Caravan. We can just move them around with us. So there's a benefit to that. If you are moving regularly, so if you're on a short trip and you're moving campsites every day, or every second day maybe, probably don't get many portable solar panels. More focus on like your permanently roof mounted solar panels, because not only will you be moving every day and packing up and unpacking the solar panels gets a bit tedious, you're also probably missing the best solar generating time of the day, which is obviously, 11 till 2 or something like that, by driving and moving campsites. So if you're on a short trip, probably lean more towards the permanently mounted solar panels. So if you are caravanning and you don't have that much problem with sort of space and weight, my pick would probably be the rigid panels, the KickAss panel in this case, but also just a rigid panel in general, because they do take up more room and they are heavier, but the advantages to them are that you're getting more power out of them and they're a bit more solid in the wind. So they feel more like a solid unit and less flimsy, if that makes sense. So we've definitely found if I'm putting out one solar panel, one portable panel at the moment, so we've got all 3 to pick from and I'm just picking one, I'm generally putting out the KickAss because it's putting out more power and for one panel, and it feels much more solid to move around and point and face the sun. The price is the downside of the Bluetti, however it does have very high output and it is very low in weight and size. So if you're after something that's more compact but still performs, I would go the Bluetti for sure. Also if you're looking at one of the solar generators from a brand, I think the Bluetti panels would be a really good choice to pair with that, because they just simply plug and play into it. You don't need a separate regulator. They just go in and good all round, good option. Lastly, we're going to talk about the AtemPower, and this is kind of the problem child, if it makes sense, because it's so cheap, right? It shouldn't be claimed as being 300 watts because there's no way it's anywhere near 300 watts. We'll talk about that in a minute, but for the price and the output, it's okay, right? It's going to do what it says. It's putting out output. It's not putting out 300 watts, it's putting out like 95 watts, but it is putting out 95 watts. So for the price, it's kind of hard to beat. I wouldn't personally buy one for my caravanning trip, just because I think you're better off with like the rigid panels or the semi-rigid. Alright, there's one real advantage of the lay flat blankets, which is also the disadvantage. It doesn't have stands, which is good and bad. You can put it out on the flat ground and you don't have to think about it, so you can leave it out there for like a week. It doesn't really matter. You don't have to be not moving it around all day, if that makes sense. It just set and forget, like it just sits there and does its thing, like at low output, I guess. So it's all a trade-off, but I do like that about it, that you can just set it and forget it. You don't have to ever move it. It just sits there. Alright, it's a few months later. We're basically doing an update on our test, even though we haven't even published the video test yet. We thought it's taken us a while to put it together and all that. And since then we've noticed, because we use the panels all the time, we've noticed that the outputs have actually gone up a bit as it's come later towards summer. I'm just going to quickly show you now. We're in, mid-November. So there's still a little bit more to go towards summer, but the power outputs that we're getting now will be pretty reasonable for across most of the year in Australia anyway. Okay. So we've got all 3 panels out. They're all flat. They're all flat. I will move the cords and stuff like that. And they're all flat because the sun is straight up above us. It is around midday. So the angles of the panels has no effect at the moment. They've all been out there for a few minutes. And then as the panels have heated up over like the space of 5 minutes, just sitting in the sun, the outputs have dropped significantly. I don't think it's going to get any more real world than this. This is about what the panels are slightly dirty because we don't keep things perfectly clean. So this isn't a best case scenario. This is a real world. These panels have been used for months now, being tested. They're a bit dirty. They're on slightly uneven ground. Like, it's not a best case, it's a real world. So hopefully this helps you. So first up, we're doing the AtemPower panel. You can see it flat out there on the ground, six panels, claimed 300 watts. What it's doing now, after about 5 minutes in the sun and warming up, it is now doing 113 watts, 8.18 amps, 112. You can see the number here. Bear in mind that's 112 watts, that's only while the sun is directly overhead. It'll fluctuate a little bit around that, but generally the problem with this panel is that it does not have legs, doesn't have stands, does not move around. So this is the most power that you'll get out of it during the middle of the day. All right, next up, the Bluetti panel. So this is the smallest and lightest of the 3, claimed 200 watts. It's producing, it's producing 111 watts. 8.1 amps. It's been less affected by heat degradation. It has gone from 122 down to 111. The AtemPower over there, the big 6 panel, has gone from 150, what was it, 150-ish down to 110. So yeah, the Bluetti's definitely been less affected by heat degradation, and it's close to the claimed 200 watts as a percentage wise, if that makes sense. The AtemPower claims 300 watts. So as we saw in the earlier tests, I've now plugged in the KickAss. You can see it sitting in the sun, full sun above. So in the earlier test, the KickAss definitely is producing the most power. So here we go. It is producing 144.8 watts, 145 watts, 10.5 amps. Because after it's been sitting in the sun for like probably 10 minutes now, it's hot, like they're physically hot, like warm and hot to the touch, the panels now. So I expect this is probably around the real life use that you're going to get, real life power that you're going to get out of it. So summer maybe a bit more, but it's also going to be a bit hotter, so I don't know. I think it'll be about this. All right, there we go. Just a little note on the KickAss as well, that power output that I just showed you is using a third-party MPPT regulator, not the inbuilt PWM regulator that it comes with. I will actually just quickly plug that in and see how that goes in comparison. Well, that's a twist. In a surprising turn of events for me, sorry, the camera's over there. The built-in PWM regulator that's built into the KickAss panels on the back of it is producing 153 watts. It is a small but noticeable increase compared to the third-party MPPT regulator that we were using just before. Very interesting, and good job KickAss for making a great PWM regulator. I thought they were old technology and would produce less power. I think they might, when it gets like less full sun, the MPPT regulator might be better. It's meant to have like better algorithms or something like that to produce more power. I'm not like a super expert. Yeah. All right, let's talk about panel output and advertising. So in my personal opinion, it's misleading what is happening in the panel manufacturing world, and especially in portable panels that we've seen a lot from certain brands, including the AtemPower here. So it says it's a 300 watts, producing 95 watts. bit of a gap there, a bit of a difference. Is that misleading to claim that it's 300 watts when it's never going to produce 300 watts? I think it is. The other issue with this is that as the cheaper manufacturers have increased their claims and decreased their prices, I think it forces the better manufacturers to increase their claims as well, unfortunately, because if you're looking at, like, say, a Bluetti and it was $700 for a 120 watt panel, or you can buy this one, which is a 300 watt panel for $400, suddenly who's going to be buying a 120 watt panel, even if it actually produces its output of 120 watts, right? So I think that the cheaper end of the market has driven this, and unfortunately the larger manufacturers have had to sort of follow. This is just my opinion. Obviously to a lesser degree. So the KickAss, for example, claims it's 200 watts. It's actually producing like 135, 140 watts. They could say it's a 300 watt panel, like, you know, because it's producing more than a 300 watt panel. But, yeah. The main reason that we did this comparison is because we wanted to know what the outputs were and to let you guys all know, like, because we had a cheaper panel that just wasn't anywhere near what it was rated to, wasn't putting out anything remotely close to it. And so we thought it'd be really interesting to do a bit of a shootout and compare the different types of panel and stuff like that. So I want to thank KickAss for letting us do this review, and Bluetti, they've both sent us the panels. The AtemPower we bought ourselves, just because I really wanted a cheap comparison panel. So thank you to those guys for sending us these review units. We'll have some links to buy them down below. I think we get a little kickback if you buy the KickAss or the Bluetti, but like, it doesn't really bother us if you do or don't. Lastly, just want to wrap it up and say everything is a compromise, and this is an old saying, like, you can have it fast, or you can have it good, or you can have it cheap, and you can only pick two. And so it's kind of the same with this stuff. You can either have it, like, you can have it expensive, or you can have it light, or you can have it with a high output. You can only pick two of those things. So yeah.
Don't forget, like and subscribe.
Thank you for sticking around and watching us. I hope this has been useful for you. If you've got any questions about the different panels or the different styles of panel, we've been extensively testing them for about 3-4 months now. Put them through all sorts of paces, so we're happy to answer any questions you might have.
As they fall off the table.
You can see here that the rigidity of the KickAss has kept it on the table, and the Bluetti has unfortunately blown off because it's a bit lighter.